Namaste. Welcome to Jack Colley's Black Book. We're on episode 54 and continuing to look at the songs on the Christmas album, Jeanette, Isabella, A Christmas Love Story. And the third track is Jingle Bells. It's in a 5/4 time signature, so it's got a little bit different feel to it than the traditional Jingle Bells. And of course, I took some liberties with the lyrics to better fit the narrative. So in this song, basically, here's what happens in, I don't know, part 3 or scene 3 or song 3 of this story that I'm telling on this album, Jingle Bells, is that Jeanette, represented by Grace, or Grace represented by Jeanette, actively goes out to search for Isabel because she wants to belong to somebody. And Isabel, at the same time, Isabella is also searching for Jeanette, for Grace. And the two of them have to come together in order for heaven to be created in this space. And I was thinking about, this idea of this cold winter night where the angels have just descended. And meanwhile, as the angels have descended over the manger scene, we have Jeanette and Isabella in some other dimension, some other world, some other place, who are out searching for one another because they have this longing to belong to somebody else. And I thought about that. I thought about, what does that mean in terms of humans' search for God? Because there are a few things that I've heard that they just don't resonate with me. And I have continued to say that a lot of times I'll draw a conclusion on what I know something is not. I'll draw a conclusion like, okay, that just can't be it. And in my mind, that gets me a little bit closer to what it probably is. But then the closer I get to that, there's this paradox where I realize how much more searching I have to do. And I think somehow that's been built into the design of our life and our experience, is that often we figure out what something is not, and we think we get closer to what something is, and then suddenly we find ourselves searching even more. And that to me is growth. That to me is a dynamic life. That to me is actually living and maturing and growing and coming into something new. So I thought about this idea that people go out and search for God. And I get this from a psychological and a philosophical standpoint about how, humans need to have some existential questions answered, the bigger meaning of life, and they come up with religion. Like, I understand all of that. But that seems to suppose that God is somehow hiding and needs to be found, or somehow you need to do something magic to somehow allow God into your life. I'm not sure that that feels right to me. And so I've kind of put that in the section of my mind like, yeah, okay, I acknowledge that some people believe that, but I'm not too sure that that is really what's going on. And then the opposite is true as well. I've heard this thing, and this often is in the more evangelical Christian traditions, particularly in things like worship music, which is, a lot of pandering. And I mean, it's just kind of, worship music is really interesting to me. But this idea that God is somehow pursuing you. And I think, I don't know that that quite makes sense either. What seems to make sense to me is that this meeting between Grace and Consecration, this meeting between Jeanette and Isabella, has already occurred. And to me, maybe the best thing that we can do is acknowledge what has already happened. And I think maybe on some level, that's what the prophets did. I'm not sure. I'm still chewing on this, trying to figure this out. But this idea that maybe everything already has been redeemed, and we just need to understand and be patient to kind of see it through, but understanding that somewhere down the road, as we are, eternal spirits continuing to be trapped in the space-time continuum, somewhere down the road, all has already been redeemed. And the sooner we acknowledge that, the sooner we become aware of that, the sooner we are going to live full, conscious lives where we are aware and we're living and we're growing and we're maturing and it's dynamic and we're breathing and we're actually engaged in this dance that, that we call life. And so sometimes I find myself beginning to lean toward maybe Jingle Bells is about Jeanette and Isabella have already met. We know they're going to meet, but now we anticipate the meeting. And so we have, the different scenes in Jingle Bells that you can listen to the song. We have bells on bobtails ring. So Jeanette decides to take the horse out, and the horse has a bobtail, which I did a little bit of research on bobtails because I'm always looking for the symbolism behind things. And I didn't really find a lot of symbolism behind a bobtail and Jingle Bells as much as I found just more common reasons for why they did that. And my understanding is that they cut the horse's tail short so that it wouldn't get caught in the reins. So that makes sense to me. And then they put Jingle Bells on there because that way people could, it's kind of a warning system. You could hear where the sleighs were coming. And I thought that must be a kind of a cool sound. If you've ever heard Jingle Bells with an orchestra, they're on a stick and they've got multiple bells all around, and you play them by, you hold the bottom and then you kind of tap the top, and it gives this cool jingle sound that really only Jingle Bells have that particular sound. I should have found some and brought them in so you could see them, but I didn't think that far ahead. But anyways, so she's out on the horse in her sleigh, and here's what I think. Here's what I think prompted Jeanette to take a sleigh ride. I think I think it's verse 3 says, Jeanette, she wished she had a love to join her by her side. And I think that's what all humans, I think, really long for. I mean, we have friends and we have family and we have people who are by our sides kind of journeying with us. But I really have to believe that we're also designed, or we have evolved to want to have that one life partner. And some of us, like me, we have to find it much later in life, and maybe we have to lose a partner before we actually search and find it. So we all have our different ways of arriving there, but there's something really intimate and beautiful about finding your person, that you belong to them and they belong to you. And there's this mutuality that you have. So she wished she had a love to join her by her side. She harnessed up her horse, bobtail bells delight. She knew tonight's the night. So she had hope, and there's that continued theme of hope that comes up. She knew tonight's the night. Please make spirits bright. Jeanette hears Isabella's song drifting through the night. So if you think about Isabella is singing this song of come to me, connect, have an oath, consecrate, and then you have Jeanette with the bells, and the bells are kind of calling out to the song that Isabella's singing, and vice versa. And so she's going down a path again in the bleak midwinter on this night, where in another part, right, the sky has broken open, the cloven skies have broken open, and the angels have come down to protect the infant of God, God's incarnation. And in another part of the world in this storyline, we have Jeanette and Isabella searching out for one another with their respective signals of Jingle Bells for Jeanette and a song for Isabella. And the cutters through the snow, the horse was lean and lank. Then as she's coming up to this path, and I believe I have an image here. Oh, there's the Christmas album story. She comes up to the path and she sees beauty on a white stag. So here is an AI-generated image of a white stag. And so you can picture Isabella sitting on the white stag, and then Jeanette comes on her sleigh with the jingle bells, and it just stops at the path, and they recognize each other, and it's like the hope kicks in, and we have found our partners, we have found our person, and now something's going to grow. And the white stag is really interesting because I did some research on this, because white stags show up in all different stories. And the one that came to mind initially when I read White Stag was the hunt that is it Pensy children, the Penvey children, or something like that, from the Chronicles of Narnia, when the children go on the hunt for the white stag. There's some symbolism behind that. And there is some symbolism behind the killing of the white stag, but there's a lot more symbolism just behind the white stag in general. So I have some ideas that I want to share here about a white stag. So a white stag is a bringer or announcer of hope and new beginnings. And that to me fits the Christmas story beautifully. You know, new hope, new beginnings. Um, the white stag also represents purity and virginity, something that is untouched, something that is untarnished, if you know put it that way. It could be a symbol of royalty. And, we think about, the infant, the incarnation of God in an infant, and how this is the king, if you will. And I will continue to draw the parallel that the earth, that the physical reality is the queen. And I even found this in the Christian tradition, a white stag. As the stag pants for streams of water, as the deer pants for streams of water, uh, so my soul pants for you, my God. The psalmist has this image of this deer panting for a stream and draws this parallel to how we pant for God. We thirst. We're thirsty for God. And then here's where things wrap up, because now Jeanette and Isabella have met. So now we have Grace has met with Consecration. And here is, I think it's verse 4, I guess. Jeanette is now Isabel's. Isabella is now hers. The stag joined Bobtail Bay. See, even the horse and the stag had to fall in love in this Christmas story. So even the two of them connected and found their other horse, or other equestrian, or how, I don't know, equine, I don't know. So anyway, Jeanette's now Isabel's, and Isabella is now hers. The stag joins Bobtail Bay. Salvation joined her grace. They took each other's hands. Their eyes told all to hell. Their eyes told all to tell, belonging to each other now, heaven conquered hell. And I think that is a really beautiful image, that in this moment, in each moment that we live, we get to choose whether heaven is conquering hell or whether we are allowing hell to just exist. We have that choice in every moment of our life to either usher in heaven in that moment or usher in hell. And at some point, maybe after the first of the year, maybe sooner, I want to do a podcast on, more psychological, on depression and anxiety, because one of the things I teach my students is that depression is often a living in the past, and anxiety is often a living in the future. And depression and anxiety are all often it is almost as if you're not living in the present. And if you don't live in the present, you're either living in the past, which I'm going to attribute to some sort of a depression, or you're living in the future, which to me is going to elicit a lot of anxiety. So at some point, we'll unpack that a little bit more, ways that I frame depression and anxiety for my students and my clients to help them work through that. But the idea is this: every moment we get to choose whether we are ushering in heaven or ushering in hell. And I believe in the Christmas story, there are so many different scenes that are all about ushering in heaven. And when you usher in heaven, when you bring light to the darkness, hell just goes away. So we're going to end there. And to next time, my friends, namaste.